Today I'm building a dining room table for my friend Julie. I have these legs, that's heavy, from Osborne Wood Products. They're awesome. 29 inches in height. Perfect for your dining table needs. And I have 5/4 by 6 pieces of pine for the tabletop, along with 1x4s for the apron, along with hardware from Rockler. So this may actually be real woodworking today. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's see how it goes first, and then we can all decide whether it counts or not. Okay? Today's material purchase list is as follows. We're going to need 7 5/4 by 6x8s and 3 1x4x8s, along with 4 legs of your choice. The 5/4 by 6x8s are what we're going to use for our main tabletop. We're going to cut these to 88 inches each and then join them together to create one big, happy, if not a bit dysfunctional, family of wood. When they make these cuts on the lumber, they're not always straight. So what we want to do is take our miter saws and cut off the first end, measure from that end 88 inches, and then make our second cut. That way we have perfectly square stock that's ready to be joined. I took all 7 pieces downstairs to my pipe clamps in my basement because my garage is not level. And then I took my 5 pipe clamps and laid them out the length of my tabletop. Because I'm going to be using a biscuit joiner, I want to make a mark across the entire tabletop to let me know the orientation of each board for when I have to take and replace a single board to cut slots for biscuits in each piece.
I want you to remember what we learned. Ducks stick together, right? Show me the flying V.
Yeah!
So I just make my way along the tabletop and I go piece by piece and alternate the wood grain. You can really get a sense of which way the wood grain is going if you look at the side of your boards. I went out and purchased a Ryobi biscuit joiner specifically for this tabletop. I want to make sure it's perfect, or as perfect as I am physically capable of making it. I put a biscuit slot a 1/2 inch from each edge and every 8 inches thereafter. You just line up this line right here to your mark, push the button, and then push the unit in, and then it'll route out that slot. You need to be sure to place the biscuit slots on the same spot on each piece that you're joining together, so that when you put the biscuits in, everything lines up perfectly. I'm going to join my tabletop in sections. The first section only has 3 boards, so I cut all of my biscuit slots out, and then I'm just going to do a dry fit to make sure everything's gravy. It's gravy, babe. I'm laying a very generous bead of the Type Bond 2 on the first piece of wood, and then I'm going to use my paintbrush to distribute it evenly across the side of the board. Grab your biscuits. You do not have to add any extra glue to each individual biscuit. So I'm going to place the first 2 boards together, and then I'm going to repeat the same steps for my 3rd board. You just want to take your time and center the biscuits in the slots. That way the 2 boards fit together nicely. Once you're all set, go ahead and tighten your clamps. And if you need to, just put some downward pressure on any part of the joints on certain board to make sure everything is flush and level. But if you're using square and level boards on level ground with biscuits, it's going to make this process a lot easier. After a few hours, I came back down and I joined the next 2 boards using the same technique as before. Wipe off any excess glue that shoots out from the joints Another option would be to actually let it alone and let it dry and harden, and then you can chisel it right off. I don't know which is better. So what I actually would like to know is it more advisable to wipe the glue off or to just let it harden and then chisel it off after the fact? I know there's a lot of seasoned veteran woodworkers out there who watch the show, and I'd love to hear your input. And on the next day, I joined the final two boards. At this point, I'm just thoroughly going over the entire tabletop to make sure everything is flat and flush and the boards are joined to my liking. And I'm liking. And finally, once again, I'm wiping the excess glue with very wet paper towels. Once the tabletop was fully dried, I brought it upstairs and outside onto my sawhorses. Using a carpenter's square, I make my mark across the width of the board. I do this for both sides so that I know I'm about to get a square cut. I'm laying out one of my 1x3s I'll be using as an apron, and I'm going to clamp it down and use it as a guide for my circular saw. I measured the distance from the blade of my circular saw to the outside guide. I'm going to rest that guide along this board and use it to make a straight cut. Right now I'm measuring my final length of the table, which will be 84 inches. If I could just get this clamp out of the way. There we go. Foam meets sawdust. Sawdust foam. So now that my tabletop is cut to the final length, I'm going to prepare it for the apron installation, which will be in part 2. I'm going to sand it down, I'm going to chisel off any excess glue, and then sand it, and then sand it some more. I'm slowly making my way down each joint and taking my time and getting all of the excess glue that squeezed out off with my chisel. Next, I'm sanding down the entire bottom side of the tabletop with 100 grit sandpaper. Now I'm going to flip the table over and hand sand with my sanding block the top of the table. I'm just taking my time here and going with the grain, that way I don't scratch the tabletop. So once I've finished sanding the tabletop, I'm going to build and install the apron. So check that out on part 2 coming out next week. And thank you so much for watching. You're the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone. Simply the best.
Part 1 est on the